In this video, we're going to look at different sampling methods. The frame is a list of all subjects in a population, and random sampling, also known as simple random sampling, is a sample in which every individual or every group in the population has the same chance of being selected for the sample. Now, some ways of doing simple random sampling is by using something like a random number generator. A psychologist who leads a brain tumor support group wishes to meet one-on-one with 2 of the 8 members to evaluate the effectiveness of the group. So here are 8 members. What are all of the possible pairs of individuals, right? We want to have this psychologist wants to meet one-on-one with just 2. So really 1-on-2, but I digress. So we want to list the possible sets of 2 without duplicating any pairs. Now, I'm not going to write these names out, but if you do notice, the names start with the letters A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. So it's going to make it a little bit easier for us to list them. Now, we're going to be very systematic with this. So we're going to start with Alex. And we're going to pair Alex with everyone else. So Alex and Brittany, Alex and Caleb, Alex Dave, Alex Edward, Alex Frank, Alex Grant, and Alex and Heather. Now we're going to start with Brittany. But we don't want to pair Brittany with Alex because Alex and Brittany have already been a pair, and that's the same pair. So we're actually done with Alex altogether, and we're going to pair now Brittany with the remaining members. Brittany Caleb, Brittany Dave, Brittany Edward, Brittany Frank, Brittany Grant, and Brittany Heather. And now we're done with all of the pairs that would be paired with Brittany. Starting with Caleb, Caleb Dave, Caleb Edward, Caleb Frank, Caleb Grant, and Caleb Heather. And now we're done with Caleb. I'm going to ask that you pause the video and continue building these lists, and then restart the video when you're finished to check it. When you check your pairs, you should end up with a total of 28 different pairs if you were to count them. Now, based on this list, what do you think is the likelihood that a pair, Alex and Grant, will be selected? So we've got 28 total pairs, and how many of them have Alex and Grant in it? Well, there's only one group with Alex and Grant. We designed our pairs that way so that we didn't have any repetition. So that likelihood would be 1 out of the 28. So this 1 representing the number of pairs with Alex and Grant. And the 28 representing the total number of pairs. And congratulations, you just solved a probability problem, which we are going to see again in Unit 3. Now, we talked about simple random sampling a little bit before. We talked about a random number generator, and that can be done using technology. So Excel has a random number generator. A lot of websites can do random number generators. There are also tables of random numbers that could be used. Now, some other effective sampling methods include systematic sampling, where you're sampling every kth subject. So we're sampling every 100th iPhone in a production line to test functionality. Cluster random sample is when the population is divided into groups called clusters, and you take a random sample of clusters and measure all the subjects in those clusters. So an example, if we are surveying dorms, let's say there are 10 floors with 10 rooms on each floor. Each floor is considered a cluster. You randomly pick 3 of the floors and survey all 10 rooms on that floor. That's an example of cluster sampling. Now, stratified sampling is similar to that, where you divide your population into a group, and we call them strata. And then you take a random sample from each of the group. So if we're thinking about that 100 dorm room example that we had before, let's say half are undergraduate and half are graduate dorms. And we want to survey a total of 30 dorms. So we're going to divide our dorms into 2 groups, undergraduate and graduate, and then we're going to take a sample of 15 from each of those. So to summarize the difference between stratified random sampling and cluster sampling, stratified, we divide the population into groups and take a certain number from each group. Clusters, we divide the population into group, select a certain number of the groups, and take all members from those selected groups. Other sampling methods, we have convenience sample, a sample that is easy to obtain, such that you use the most convenient group available or decide haphazardly on the spot who to sample. In this course, you are going to be doing a project where you are going to collect a sample, and most of you are going to have a convenience sample. Convenience samples, however, are not ideal. They're usually not representative of the population. There's typically severe bias as a result to time and location of the interview, judgment of the interviewer about whom to interview. Convenience samples are often volunteer samples. Most common form of convenience sample where subjects volunteer for the sample. So you just ask people to fill something out. And volunteers are generally not representative, again, of the entire population. Multi-stage sampling includes samples obtained using a combination of sampling techniques. Now, I just mentioned that you're going to have a project where you are going to be collecting data on a sample. So let's talk about some common ways to collect data, and that is using surveys, which can be done with a personal interview, a telephone survey, or a mailed questionnaire, or an online questionnaire that's a little dated. And again, these are very common ways to collect data, and we'll be using that in Project 1. Now, our sampling has bias. So sampling bias is when the technique used to obtain the sample's individual tends to favor one part of the population over another, or has undercoverage of a group and gives incomplete information about the population. So an example, if we're wanting to sample men in the US, but we only sample men who live on the East Coast. Another bias is non-response bias, where individuals selected do not respond to the survey. This occurs in every single survey. Most of you will experience this in Project 1, and we'll talk about that as we start introducing that project. Response bias is when answers on a survey do not reflect the true feelings of the respondent. So some examples of response bias include interviewer error, misrepresented answers, wording of questions, order of questions, type of question, and data entry. Interviewer error is an example of interviewer error. A car salesman conducts a survey and reports 90% of customers would buy another car from him. Do you trust these results? So if a car salesman is saying, yes, 90% of my customers want to buy a car from me, that might be biased. Misrepresented answers. How fast can you run a mile? I may exaggerate my response to sound faster than I am. Or what time do you arrive at work? I may respond with the time that I'm supposed to be there rather than the time that I actually show up. The wording of questions. Do you think the United States should forbid public speeches against democracy? Do you think the United States should allow public speeches against democracy? Do you use drugs? So again, the wording of these questions may elicit a certain type of response. Order of questions, or the words in a question. Do you approve or disapprove of the job Trump, now Biden, is doing as president? Versus, do you disapprove or approve of the job Trump or Biden is doing as president? By putting approve or disapprove first, you might yield certain responses. Question 1 from a survey: do you enjoy going to sporting events? And then question 6 from that same survey: what do you enjoy doing in your free time? So because you've already asked them whether or not they enjoy going to sporting events, they might be inclined to respond that way in question 6. The type of question: what is the biggest issue in post-secondary education? Versus, what is the big issue in post-secondary education? Funding, student preparedness, unrealistic legislation, or accreditation requirements? The first leaves it open-ended, which could lead to any number of responses. The second forces people to choose a particular answer.